Eleanor had lived in the same old house in Maine for more than 6 decades. The wooden floorboards groaned beneath her careful steps, and the cold wind tapping against the window panes was just another familiar sound in a house that had known laughter, arguments, holidays, and quiet. She didn't mind the stillness. At 83, she had learned that some silences were peaceful, while others whispered to her late at night. Richard had been gone nearly 20 years now. Sometimes she forgot how long it had been. Sometimes she remembered every day without him. Their marriage had not been perfect. No long marriage is, but there had been love once. A strong, simple love that had weathered so many seasons. And yet, in the final years of his life, that love had felt distant. Not absent, but buried beneath unspoken frustrations, the weight of years, and perhaps pride. They had grown quiet with each other, not angry, just tired. That winter came early. Snow fell thick and soft across the small town, covering Eleanor's front porch and the familiar oak tree in her yard. On one cold morning, she decided to climb up into the attic to look for the old Christmas decorations. The tree had sat bare for 2 years now, but this year, something tugged at her. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the ache in her chest that grew heavier each December. The attic hadn't changed. Dust danced in the sunbeams as she opened the creaking door. The air smelled of cedar and thyme. Boxes were stacked neatly, just the way Richard had kept them all those years ago. She found the holiday box easily. Faded lights, cracked ornaments, a stuffed Santa missing one eye. But just as she was about to turn back, her eyes fell on something tucked behind a stack of books. A small wooden chest. She didn't remember ever seeing it before. She pulled it gently into the light. The wood was weathered and dry, tied shut with an old piece of string that had frayed at the edges. Her fingers trembled slightly as she undid the knot. Inside, carefully arranged in rows, were letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to her, all in Richard's handwriting. The air left her lungs for a moment. She sat down slowly, her hand covering her mouth. She picked up the first letter. The paper was yellowed, but the ink was still strong. "My dear Eleanor," it began. She read in silence. He had written it during a business trip in 1978. He wrote about how much he missed her, how he had seen a woman at a train station who reminded him of the way she smiled on their wedding day. The second letter came after their first big fight. He apologized for his temper. He wrote that he didn't know how to express himself sometimes, that he feared saying the wrong thing, so he said nothing at all. One by one, she read through the years. There were letters from birthdays he'd forgotten, anniversaries he'd missed, letters written after long nights when he had fallen asleep on the couch instead of beside her. Letters where he called her my anchor and my better half. Letters filled with words he never spoke aloud. Tears slipped down her cheeks. These were not grand declarations, not poetic epics. They were quiet, clumsy, honest. Letters written in silence by a man who had felt too much and said too little. Near the bottom of the box, she found the final one. It was dated 3 weeks before he died. In it, he wrote that he knew his time was running short. That if she found these letters one day, he hoped they would show her what he couldn't always say. He said he wished he had been a braver man, the kind who held her hand more often, who told her every morning how lucky he was. He wrote that he had loved her from the moment he met her, and that he had never, ever stopped. Eleanor pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. For so many years, she had believed that Richard had drifted away from her in the end. She had carried that quiet grief, that unspoken disappointment. Now, holding his words in her trembling hands, she saw the truth. He had never left her. Not really. He had just not known how to come closer. That night, she sat at the kitchen table with a pen and a blank piece of paper. She hadn't written a letter in years. Her fingers moved slowly, but her heart poured out everything she had carried. She wrote to Richard as if he were still sitting across from her, reading the newspaper, humming to himself. She told him she forgave him. She told him she understood. She told him she missed him, but now somehow missed him less. She folded the letter and placed it in the box with the others. Then she tied the string back around it, gently, like wrapping a gift. The next morning, she set a small fire in the fireplace, made herself a cup of tea, and looked out the window. Snow was falling again, soft and slow. And for the first time in many winters, Eleanor felt warm. Not because the house was any less empty, but because she wasn't. She had found what she didn't know she was, still searching for: the missing words. The ones that lived quietly in silence, waiting, just like love often does, to finally be heard.